Hello, 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 guys. Let me make sure I get my thing for my back because sitting here for a little while, whew, kind of gets you kind of stiff a little bit. So I've been needing to prop myself up a little bit, just a little bit. So good afternoon, everyone. Okay, let me make sure that I acknowledge you guys in the chat. Welcome to Live with Hanifa Nayela. And of course, it is me, Hanifa Nayela. And I want to say thank you to the people who are watching, who are here tuned in at the beginning of this conversation, because this is what this is. It is a conversation. Um, and so I usually go back and forth with you guys in the comment section. So please feel free to express yourself in the comment section. I will highlight your comments. And if I can address it, I will address it. If I don't know, I will say I don't know. Um, yeah, and I like engaging with you guys. So, first things first, if you are new here, and you have not subscribed as yet, please do so at this time. Hit the the subscription button. If you think someone will benefit from joining this conversation or just listening to the conversation, make sure you guys share with those that are in your WhatsApp groups, in your personal groups on Facebook and on social media. Let them know. Tell them to tune in. We're having a good conversation over here because I already know it's going to be good. Okay. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, you can follow me at The Real Hanifa Nayela. And if you are feeling generous, and before you even ask, because I'm probably not going to bring it up again, my Cash App will continue to be shown at the bottom of the screen. It is $ Hanifa Nayela. So feel free to donate if that is what your spirit leads you to do. All right. So let me get into acknowledging my peeps, right? So, first of all, Ashan clearly was passing through here. He says that my topic sounds yucky because it's dealing with constipation. And that's all right. We're going to talk about that. I see my good sister here, Inya. Peace to you. Thank you for always being supportive and always being here, ready to engage in the conversation. I appreciate you so much. And then we have my bae. She says, Peace, Hanifa. It's Muslima from the park yesterday. Peace to you guys. Let me tell y'all, we had an awesome sister circle at a park at the park in Baltimore. All women just there tapping in to spirit and exploring their own consciousness in a very safe and serene environment. It was definitely a blessing. It was just something to experience, and I definitely need to do more of those. But yes, peace to you, sis, and thanks for joining. And if your name is Muslima, I actually have a sister whose name is Muslima, but I'm not gonna call her out right here. But yes, peace to you, and thanks for passing through and enjoy my time with you guys yesterday at the park. All right, my big sis. She's not my big sis. She's my big sis. Always here showing her love. Hey, Taki. Thanks for coming through. Let me see who else we have in the house. Woo! Okay, we have the one. Says, hey, Hanifa. Hey, chat. Hey, the one. Thanks for being here and thanks for passing through. And just so you guys know, you guys can always converse with each other in the chat. That's what we do. Definitely, as long as it is respectful and we respect each other's opinions. Over here, what I like to call it is not the debate, it's a build. This is what we do. We don't debate, we build. So it's a matter of everyone just sharing their own thoughts. Um, respectfully and allowing others to share theirs as well. And I think that's sort of how we grow, allowing our own ideas and our own perceptions to be challenged is a very harmless act. It is not something to be afraid of, and it does not have to turn into a debate. We can do that, right? I have enough faith in us. So, just a reminder, if you guys are in the chat, you guys, we chat back and forth to each other in the chat all the time. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna jump into the topic, right? So I know some people are like, emotional constipation, what is that? Well, I can tell you what we all know. We know what constipation is, whether we've had our own, experience with constipation, whether it's a child we've kind of had to help through being constipated. Constipation in this context and in every other is simply you having a backup, right? You are backed up and you can't get what you need to get out. So it creates a back up. And what happens when we are backed up? All sorts of discomfort, right? If you are actually constipated and you need to move your bowels, and I hate to get into this, we know the pain that comes with that, stomach aches, right? Some people end up dealing with long-term stomach issues, right? But it's just like a serious discomfort that happens, and the focus and the goal becomes to release, right? To release. And we know what that means. When we release, it's like heaven on earth because you're having this constipation, this backup problem for how long? And it's when you finally get that relief, it's like a whew. And we're going to talk about that release because I think that sometimes when we're witnessing a release happening, when Black people are emoting or having conversations, and what we are observing is really a release, we start to say we are very emotional. And I really disagree with that, right? I disagree with that. I think that Black people in general, most of us, because of our upbringing, right? Because of the way we were parented, because of our family culture and our actual community culture, I think that a lot of us have default emotions, right? Things that we tap into. And so I know most of you guys have heard about flight or fight. And it's just saying that when someone is faced with like a traumatic experience or, maybe some sort of violence or something that initiates a fear in them, they lean on two things. They either flight, right, is to run away, and I actually think it's flight, freeze, or fight because there is a freeze that most people don't talk about. But the idea is that most people either run away or they actually fight. And I actually think there's some people that fall in the middle, which is freeze, which means that they freeze and they do nothing. That's a category as well, right? Where someone comes up against something that's challenging, um, they come up against something that's frightening, something that makes them uncomfortable. They are those of us who freeze and we do nothing, right? We've seen situations where, or we have been in those situations before in our lives where we are in a, you know, we're in a situation because we like to talk about what we would do, right? If that was me, I woulda, coulda, shoulda done this. And the reality is like oftentimes we don't know, right? So the idea is that you get into those situations and maybe somebody disrespecting another person, right? And because it's so much going on in the environment, you find that you don't step up in the way that you know you are capable of stepping up. So it might just be a freeze response, right? Because at that moment, you're not sure what to do or what is the safest or the best thing to do. And so therefore, you do nothing. So that's the freeze response that a lot of people to me don't talk about. We always talk about the flight and fight response. And I say there's freeze as well. So I'm adding that one in. But one of the things that I observe about us, is that it's not just fight or flight for us. One of the things that I came up with is that I think we are often faced with the feel or fight, right? And in most cases, Black people will rather fight than feel. And I'm going to tell you what I mean about that. So you have an emotion, right? For example, most Black people go into the, what is it, anger. And the reason why, so it's hard for us to tell sometimes what we're feeling or what the other person is feeling, right? So because it's being expressed in a very vocally aggressive manner, right? that is a little bit more socially acceptable. And the reason why it's socially acceptable is because that's the way a lot of us was raised, if we're being honest. We were raised with a lot of yelling most of the time. We were raised with a lot of yelling, a lot of shaming, a lot of harsh um reaction to certain behaviors. Like these are our environments, right? Because we have such a thing as um people call it, oh, you know how black people are, you know how black mamas are. And we know the picture that evokes when we hear that, when we're talking about black parenting. There are certain pictures that evokes. So there's a lot of yelling that happens, right? In some cases there's a lot of spankings, right, that happens, right? And so there's just certain things culturally that are more acceptable than others. So it's easier for someone to show up angry than sad. But they're actually sad, and it's just showing up as aggression or anger, because that response of anger specific, I'm going to say even especially for men, it's a little bit more socially acceptable for black men to be angry than sad. So oftentimes that is what they are going to grab for, the anger piece, okay? Versus just saying, I'm sad. So now it's a matter of you're seeing people and you're like, yo, the Snicker commercials, the Snicker commercials with it's like it has so many different scenes or scenarios, but there's one where the point of it is that the person is upset and they're not themselves, and so their friends is like, here, take a Snicker, right? And then they come back to who they are, right? It's like a Snicker commercial. It's almost like you have to be able to know the person well enough to realize that, yo, this isn't you. But when something is normalized, right, then people begin to label the collective, right? So it's normal for black people to be aggressive and angry, and so instead of me saying I'm sad, which is interpreted in a lot of our circles, in our families, in our communities, as weak. So I am going to, my sadness then shows up is emoted or expressed as anger. But is that really what it is? Right? And that's just one example. So, one of the reasons why I say we are emotionally constipated is because I am watching the conversations that are happening in these spaces, social media spaces, specifically social media spaces. And I'm just like, it just seems like we have a lot to get off, right? And so when we get into these environments and we are triggered by maybe something that's said, something that we feel need to be responded to immediately, right? The way that we respond to it, it's like I need to let all my emotions out at this moment. So you're triggered by one thing, but emotions that have nothing to do with this one thing come to the front. And now it's like a overflow of emotions that's attached to all sorts of different things, and what provoked it is the one trigger, but all of those emotions being expressed is not even for the thing that triggered the person. That's how I know a lot of us are emotionally constipated, because you watch it play out and you're like, how do you go from 0 to 1,000 over something this minuscule, this small, and you are about to pop a blood vessel in your neck or in your over something this small, over someone that you barely know, something that they say, over strangers, over the opinion of strangers. And oftentimes it has nothing to do with what's being said in the moment. It is just an opportune time to release all of that emotion. Okay, this is how people end up getting murdered and stuff over what we perceive as small things, right? Because you're like, geez, did they have to go? Did they have to go that hard over that small thing? Well, I am here to inform you that usually what you are seeing expressed has nothing to do with that small thing, especially when we're looking at an overkill. When we see an overkill in emotional expression, that's when you know that, hey, we're dealing with some emotional constipation here, and this person finally have a low opportunity to release, and so they're gonna go all in. That's one of the reasons why I say that Black people are emotionally constipated. Okay. So when we talk about constipation, I personally believe that a lot of us were trained to suppress our emotions because too much emotions in certain environments could have gotten some of us hurt or preyed upon or taken advantage of. And so we learn very, very young that you don't make yourself a target by being too emotional or being too emotive or expressing too much. You don't make yourself a target. It is unsafe to do that. So what happens to those emotions when they do come? And you're in environments where you can't really emote in a healthy way. What happens to those emotions? Where do they go? So let's talk about some of the reasons why, okay, why we emotionally suppress. So I'm going to start with my favorite one, parenting. Parenting. A lot of us, and I feel like Black boys in this particular case has it a little bit more difficult than Black girls. When we are young, okay, we've grown up in homes where it's been told to be seen and not heard, right? That means that show up but don't say a word. That means that you need to know a child's place, and a child's place is out of sight. Okay? Now, when we're young and we fall, look at the way that we treat young boys who fall and may scrape their knee and young girls who fall and may scrape their knee. Look at the reaction, right? Look at some of us, the homes that we come from, where, and we're talking about single parent homes for a lot of us, right? Female run single parent homes, where mom has had to be a little bit more tough, right? And so the usual nurture and emotion and affection that would be given to a child in a healthy parent child dynamic, right? Or culture, I'm talking about the culture in the home, can't happen because the focus, mom's energy, I'm talking about single parent homes, mom energy has to go into making sure that everybody's fed. It goes into, I'm saying, making sure that there's shelter. So she is busy and her energy is going into other things. So it takes away from the energy requires to actually nurture, right? And nurture with emotion. So a lot of us grew up in homes where our parents came off as cold, always needing to be strong, not emoting, not expressing, not breaking down, not showing any type of weakness. So we learn very young that this is what strength looks like. Suppressing your emotions. Emotions are going to come. So none of us are exempt from them. We can't hide from them, right? What I'm speaking to is that what we do with them when they come. Where do we learn that? We learn that first from parenting, because anything that we learn in this world, when we first enter in, we are looking to our caretakers to teach us about this world, to teach us how do we react in certain circumstances. We look to our parents. So those are our first teachers. Those are the people who teach us how to deal with our emotions. So if we're watching our parents, fathers and mothers, constantly checking themselves to make sure that they're not emoting too much or they're not showing too much affection. And this starts from babies. In our culture, there's this idea that you can't spoil a baby. Don't pick the baby up too much because you're spoiling them, whatever that means. So we are getting educated, or we are getting indoctrinated and programmed around how to deal with our emotions at a very, very young age. So one of the ways is through parenting. The other one is socialization. Boys, Boys just aren't allowed or given the space or the grace to cry, to simply cry, to be in pain and cry, to say, I am hurt, to say that, yes, she broke my heart. Yes, he broke my heart, right? Our young boys specifically are not given the space to emote in the way that girls are able to. We all know that to be a fact. So, our socialization in this country, in our culture, for boys and girls also adds to why a lot of us are emotionally constipated. Why men are afraid, or not even afraid, aren't able to say they're sad. Why our black men are off in themselves, right? We have to factor that in too. Where is their safe space to emote? Where have they ever had one? Because if you don't have it in your home, you're not going to find it outside of the home. Okay? So let me check and see who else came in before I move on to the others. Okay, so hey, Chef passing through. Peace to you, Chef. Chef said peace, love, and life to Hanifa and the chat family. Good to see you, Chef. Thanks for passing through and supporting. Chef said the analysis paralysis, correct, is called freeze, pretty much. Um, Enya says flight, fight, or freeze, correct. Peace to you, Daryl. Thanks for passing through, showing some love and support. Dante. Dante said, good evening, Hanifa. Good evening, chat. Good evening to you, Dante. Thanks for passing through. The one says some people have something more like emotional diarrhea, always yelling and screaming. And I'm coming to that too. I'm coming to that. Hey, Natasha. Good to see you, sis. Thanks for passing through. The one says we are told to man up. Exactly. You're talking to a 4-year-old and telling a 4-year-old to man up, right? So how is that interpreted? That's interpreted as men don't have emotions. Men don't show emotions. Because if you're telling me to man up, that means that I need to stop emoting in this way. And to be a man means to not emote. That is the interpretation that a lot of our young boys get, okay, from a very, very young age, right? Another way is the way that through inheritance, I was going to say to pass on, but through inheritance. So here's one of the things I keep saying whenever we're in these conversations. Here's the thing. What I've learned is that all of us have things in our families that we just do, but we don't really know what it's connected to. Okay. So I'll give you a really simple idea, right? So maybe your great, great, great grandmother, right? Maybe there was a time where I'm just using a very just off the top of my head example. Maybe there was a time where they used to deal with, I don't know, I'm gonna say bed bugs, right? So it was a thing that they dealt with. It was in the homes at that time or whatever. So your grandmother, your great 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 grandmother came up with a routine, okay? Of you get up, you shake the blanket out, you know what I'm saying? You let it sit on the chair for like a little while, and then you make the bed with it, right? That's your great, great, great grandmother. Okay. Now, the reason why she was doing it was because of the bed bug situation. Okay. So then now your great grandmother does the same thing, right? And she just, it moves on from one generation to the next. By the time it gets to you, right? You are shaking your blanket out every morning and you're putting it on the chair. Okay. But you don't even know why you're doing it, right? Why is that? Because what happens to us in our families is that behaviors are often passed down without the connection to the story as to why, right, the behavior was necessary. Do you get what I'm saying? So you're shaking out the blanket, but you don't realize that the purpose of shaking out the blanket was your great 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 grandmother bed bug situation. You have no clue. You cannot make the connection. I think that is how we pass on emotional constipation, right? I think that a lot of us in our family lines, and we all know whether, if your family was, I don't know, was maybe on a plantation, you have to really think about it this way. And I know all of us do not necessarily come from slaves, so this is not one of those conversations, okay? So you got to think about it this way. So you have an ancestor where, showing too much affection to their child could have gotten their child sold or lynched, right? Um, or in a position that they did not want for their child, right? So that parent is like, okay, I can't show too much affection to the child. I can't brag too much about my child. I can't say too many good things. I can't praise them. I can't do these things that a child should have because it is not safe to do so. So then that continues on for generations and generations and generations. And now we reach to us. So a lot of us is like, well, my father, wasn't the affectionate type, and my mother wasn't the affectionate type. And we don't understand that there's a story behind that because they inherited that coldness, right? And so now we pick it up. So no one is asking where does it come from? We are just inheriting the behaviors. It's the same thing with emotional constipation. Our parents, our great grandparents, some of our ancestors, they did not have the luxury of emoting. They didn't have the time to do so. There was no safe environment to do so. And so now, even though the times have changed, we are still exhibiting the behaviors because no one has stopped to say, no, this isn't normal. It is because normalization of anything eventually becomes culture. And so there's a lot of dysfunction that we are literally hailing as culture. And we're holding on to it with their life because this is culture, even though it's detrimental to us and to our relationships. Black people don't do this. Black people don't do that. The very things that are destroying us, we are holding on to with pride, right? Because we think that that's what makes us black. Not showing emotion to our children, not loving our children like they are like the last good child on the planet. All of these are behaviors that we've inherited. Not being able to show emotion because it could have gotten you killed. So now we are in 2022. And so those same behaviors are still showing up in a completely different environment. Same thing with the way we eat, right? Same thing with the way we eat. Soul food, whatever we want to call it. These things were dishes that our very creative and innovative ancestors, right, put together out of sheer survival. Because here's the reality: you would rather eat pork tail than starve, okay? Or pig tail and starve, or pig feet, right? Or chitlins. You would rather eat that than starve, and that is the position that our ancestors were in. So that's the example of a behavior that we still continued, even though the circumstances are not the same. We've inherited it. Okay, I hope I'm clear. Let me see. I'm going to go in the chat and then I'm going to move on because I want to talk about some of the things that we say or that we perpetuate that muzzle our emotions. But before I do that, let me make sure I acknowledge all the new people that just came in. All right. Oh, Natasha, I already acknowledged Natasha. I think I saw Sherelle. Hey, Sherelle. Hey, beautiful Queen Hanifa. Hey, beautiful Queen Sherelle. How are you, sis? Good to see you. Thanks for passing through. I know I saw Taylor. She's usually comes through. Taylor Nubia, thanks for passing through, sis. Thank you so much. And I know I saw Ashan. He looks like he's just coming back in. Hey, Ashan. And Sherelle is shouting out Inya. Hey, Sherelle. Okay, so I want to talk about some of the things that actually muzzle our emotions. Okay. So, when it comes to certain labels, there are certain things that I think that we use, we weaponize against each other that actually I consider them to be muzzles for our emotions, right? And so one of them for women particularly is the angry black woman trope, right? The angry black woman trope and what that does to a black woman who might be in a vulnerable position, and she has every right to be angry, every right to be angry. And then comes the, oh, there go the angry black woman, right? So now she has to muzzle that emotion. She has to suppress that emotion. She has to suppress her anger, or she kind of has to, like, you know, code switch, I guess. You know, like put on airs, I guess, to like act a certain way. But she has every right to be mad, every right to be angry, right? But because of the body that she's in, because she's a black woman, and because she risks the chance of being called angry, now she has to suppress those emotions that she have a right to have in that moment, right? So using the angry black woman trope, that is one way that we muzzle our emotions. Weak black men. Okay, now we have the simp. That's the word that everybody's using, the simp. Okay, you a simp. Let me tell you something. These are not new ideas, and you know, it's just new words to define the same old thing over and over. Okay, so a man showing emotion outwardly in public, black man, he risks the chance of being seen as weak. Okay, a black man complaining about maybe being hurt, right? There's no space for that. There's no room for that. Okay, so what is happening to those emotions? What's going on with him? When a black boy can't emote, what's happening? Those emotions gotta go somewhere. And that's when we're gonna get into emotional diarrhea. We're gonna get into that just now. But where is that going? So there's a risk of being looked at as weak, right? There's also the risk too of black men tiptoeing around anger and being careful how they express that anger, because the other side of it is black men are just aggressive and violent. And so you have that too. That's another way that we muzzle each other's emotions. Black men are weak, or black men are just overly aggressive and violent. And so a black man being angry now has to taper that anger, right? He has to watch what he said. He can't really express it the way he feels it, because he risks the chance of being called weak, just like the black woman risks the chance of being called an angry black woman. Okay? Another way that we muzzle is black people do not get depressed. That's another one that drives me crazy. This is not what we do, right? And it's because of our idea of what depression looks like. So when that's said, it's said towards people who deal with depression like they're always down, they're sad all the time. You know what I mean? But we have all learned now, because through mental health awareness, that depression does not just look like just pure sadness all the time. Okay, it does not. I would dare say that a lot of our men who are promiscuous and out here just sticking their thing in anything are depressed. Are depressed. A lot of our brothers who are smoking all the time, finding ways to suppress their emotions. I would dare say that a lot of those men are depressed. I would dare say that. I think even women who are promiscuous as well, that can also be a sign of depression, because now you just out there being extra risky, extremely risky behaviors is the other side of depression as well, right? That's one other way that people, exhibit depression. But for us as black people, we aren't supposed to be down. We aren't supposed to be sad. So we can't be sad and we can't be angry. right? We can't be sad or we can't be angry. Okay. So are we expected to be happy all the time? Because that's not real life. All right. Black people don't commit suicide is another one. Okay. Imagine someone who's contemplating suicide and they're black, and all they can hear in their community, in their home culture, is that black people don't commit suicide. So now, this is a black person who is thinking about deleting themselves, and the culture that they're in is saying that's some weak shit, and black people don't do that. What happens to that person? Who can they reach out to for help? Who can they share those thoughts with? Who can they go to process through those thoughts, those feelings, if it is not safe to do so in the culture? Because you risk being labeled weak, right? That's some white people shit. What happens to that black person hearing that? Where can they go? Who can they talk to in the culture if that is how we discuss feelings of sadness, feelings of hopelessness, feelings of not wanting to be here anymore? If that is how we are expressing that and that's how we are reacting to those emotions, then the culture is not safe to emote, which causes emotional constipation, because now you're talking about people suppressing emotions that should be allowed to pass through, that should be allowed to be discussed, right? But instead, that person has to suppress it. The culture is not safe. So, our culture is another thing that muzzles us emotionally. And then this is one that was tricky, and I had to face this in my own life. There's this thing called spiritual bypassing. I think that's the psychological term for it. Spiritual bypassing. And let me give you all an example. I like to give examples rather than definitions, because I think it conveys exactly, the definition of the word in a way that people can actually understand and retain, right? So spiritual bypassing, the best example I can give is this. When you are going through something and you are expressing yourself and you are processing it and you are, upset, whatever those emotions are you're experiencing. Maybe someone died. Maybe you're grieving and you're in the anger. You're in the anger part of your grief stages, right? And someone says, "Well, God doesn't give us more than we can bear." Okay, or no, you just need to think positive. Those are examples of spiritual bypassing. We have a lot of that happens to us, and we then do it to ourselves. I've been guilty of it. I've been guilty of it. Okay, this idea of, well, everything happens for a reason, and then we send the person off with that as if that's a solution to what they're dealing with, right? So spiritual bypassing, which is what people actually would call toxic positivity, that's a thing too, where your solution is just to be positive about everything. And so if a negative emotion arises, it's like, okay, you got to just ignore it. But where does that emotion go? When you don't face it and you don't talk to it and you don't give it voice, because we're going to get into the reasons that we have emotions in the first place. If you don't give that emotion voice, if you don't allow them the stage to speak as to why they're there, to convey their message to you, and you just ignore it, where does the emotion go? You think it just flies out into the air, into the heavens, into the clouds, it just disappears? No, it sits in your body. It sits in your body, waiting, festering. And so you get into situations and it's an overkill of emotions. This is what they call emotional diarrhea. Why? Because now I made you mad today, 2022, August. I made you mad. I triggered you today. But now I have to deal with your emotions from 2021, 2020, 2017. Why? Because you've never been given a healthy space to emote, a safe space to emote, or even taught how to emote, or that emotions are not bad things. So one trigger and the floodgates open up. And now that person is dealing with every hurt, every bad thing that have happened to you that has nothing to do with them and what's going on between you and them in that moment. But one of the ways that we muzzle emotions in our community is by spiritual bypassing. No, I am sad because I have been molested my entire childhood. No, I am angry because my mom was never there, or my dad was never there. So I am angry and have every right to be. I'm sad because I was sexually violated and have every right to be. But when we get into these religious organizations and so forth, we are taught to spiritually bypass, right? Bypass those feelings attached to the trauma. So, in a sense, if I can't acknowledge the feeling connected to the trauma, then I actually can't acknowledge the trauma. So essentially what you're asking me to do is just forget about it and move on. Don't that sound familiar? Isn't that what we do? Isn't that what we do as a collective? Right? Just move on. Right? You're making everybody uncomfortable. So what? So what if he's at the family dinner every Thanksgiving? So what? We know he touched you, but move on. He's moved on. Why can't you? We know she emotionally and psychologically manipulate you as her as we know how your mama is, but you gotta let that go. You gotta let that go. God is a forgiving God. You don't want to lift up your head, your eyes in hell, carrying that emotion, carrying those feelings. I'm just gonna pray for you. This is how we spiritually bypass toxic positivity. Just think positive all the time. It doesn't matter. You'll get over it. And I'm not knocking positivity because it works, because I use it. But it becomes toxic when it is used as a way to ignore or step over very necessary feelings because it just makes us uncomfortable to have those feelings. That is something that causes emotional constipation as well. Okay? All right, so let me check in with you guys and then I'm going to move on. Let's see who just came in. I think I see you guys saying some stuff. Oh, hey, Abram. Let me see. Hey, Lucky. Shout out to Lucky Marie. Thanks for passing through. Always a pleasure. And then we have Abram, good to see you. Thanks for coming through. Good, brother. And showing your presence. Thank you. Inya says, wow, of course Black people get depressed. We see it online and in our everyday lives. The pain has not been dealt with. We are supposed to be strong all the time. Yes, agreed. The one says, I've been depressed for years, and you're right. I have done all the wrong things to cope short of drinks and drugs. Yep, yep. I think we have to practice the art of being attentive, really hear each other. I suggest writing out the feelings on paper. Sometimes communications can sound different to either sex. I agree with you on that, Inya. I'm learning that men and women do not hear the same. We do not experience the world the same, nor do we perceive the world the same. There's definitely some difference in wiring, and then when you get down to the individual and how their experiences affect the way that they navigate the world, that's a whole other level. But as a collective, as women and as men, we definitely are different. I think a part of why there's such a major clash is that we know we're different, but we're having a hard time just honoring those differences. And if we can honor those differences and respect them, then we can learn to work with them versus just bucking up against each other all the time. Men are trying to make women um react or respond or deal with things the way they do, and that's just not possible. And I think that women are also doing the same thing in expecting men to show up like us, and that's not going to happen. So I think both sides need to understand and accept that what they're wanting is never going to happen because it goes against our biological makeup, right? It goes against nature in a sense, so it's not going to happen. So the best thing is to try to understand each other, and then work with those differences, right? So if I know there are certain things that a man, like respect, is at the top of the list for men when they ask what they want in relationship. Respect is huge. So what do now that's the general for men, right? General. So if you know respect is a big one generally for men, then we narrow it down to the men in our lives and what they consider disrespect, because we know broadly respect is a big deal for men. Now we got to narrow it down because all men are not the same and they're not coming from the same backgrounds and experiences. So now you have to narrow it down to the men who are in your circle, the ones you're coupled with, your uncles, your brothers, whatever. Generally, men want to be respected. That's the top of the list. So then it comes down to, now you got to tell me, what is respect to you? And we go from there and we deal with each other accordingly. So I agree with that, Enya, very much so. Okay, so I'm gonna move on. Okay, because I know I said I wanna make sure I get to some solutions, right? Okay, so I want to make sure I covered everything. Oh, I talked about how, like, oftentimes when mislabeling our emotions as a way to not be ridiculed, right? And so instead of saying, no, I'm sad, we show up as angry because it's just safer to do so in the culture. And that's something that we need to fix. Okay. All right. So let's talk about what happens when we don't allow ourselves to fully feel our emotions. Okay. So one of the things is mental exhaustion. That's one, right? So when we suppress emotions, you're suppressing, and I said this a little earlier, you're suppressing the memory, right, of the thing that caused the emotion, that made you uncomfortable. So you can't forget a memory on purpose, right? So in order to avoid thinking about that thing, your mind end up working overtime, which causes mental exhaustion. So now you're doing overtime because you're putting all of that energy into trying not to think about that thing, trying not to feel that emotion. You're trying your best to just focus on something else, to spiritually bypass that thing. And so now all your energy is going towards that. So now your mind is working overtime, and that's just going to create mental burnout and mental exhaustion. So that's one of the things that suppressing our emotions can cause. Okay. Suppressing your emotion can bring on even stronger negative emotions. So, this is something I talked about earlier. So, when you suppress your emotions, it's a buildup, and we're seeing it in this space right here, right? In YouTube. So, some people are calling it emotional diarrhea, right? So, when you're suppressing and you're suppressing that, that emotion is sitting there and it's festering. And what happens to something that's festered? What happens when you have an infection? I mean, not an infection, a cut, and you don't tend to it and you don't clean it. It festers and then it becomes what? Infected. It's no different with our emotions. Emotions come to teach us something. Okay, it is bringing a message. There's either something for you to learn or something for you to change. And if you are not giving your emotions space to convey that message, then you are creating an unhealthiness within your own being. I will dare say this is why a lot of women are dealing with fibroid issues. One of the factors, okay, that's stress, that emotional suppression. I would say the rise in prostate cancer for men is a part of this as well. Okay, not being able to emote in the way that we should, not allowing us to be able to sit with our emotions, hear what our emotions have to say, give our emotions a stage to come and say why they're there, and just allow it to pass. That is usually how it should work. But if you already have negative connotations that are connected to certain emotions, then when those emotions come to you, you're just going to ignore them, or you're going to tuck them away somewhere in the attic, in the basement. You're going to push them in a corner somewhere. Because in your mind and in your culture and how you've learned is that that's a negative emotion. And this is a positive emotion. And when you ask people what positive emotions are, they have very few. But when you ask what negative emotions are, they'll give you a whole damn list. Emotions are just emotions. What you do with them will determine whether they're negative or positive. For example, jealousy. Most people automatically go to jealousy is a negative thing. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. If you are feeling jealous because a sister, I don't know, maybe she has long hair. I'm bald, so let me go that route. Maybe she has long hair, and I'm jealous of her because she got long hair and I don't. So now that jealousy, that emotion has come in. What am I about to do? Here's the two things I can do. I can either pretend not to be jealous and end up looking goofy, which is what happens because women are very big. Black people in general, men and women, like we don't like to be told we're jealous of people. We will never admit to that. We will never own it. Most of us are not owning jealousy. We are not admitting to it. We are we're just not. It's an ego thing. But what if jealousy came and I'm jealous because her hair is longer? But I have two things now I can do. I can actually look at what's realistic or unrealistic. So let's say my hair just don't grow the way that hers do, right? So that's a genetic thing. Can I change that? If the answer is no, then you learn from that jealousy. Oh, this is something you're just going to have to let go of because it is unrealistic. All right, jealousy. Thank you for coming and teaching me that. Okay, jealousy. Thank you for showing me that. That is something that I need to accept so that I don't keep experiencing that emotion over things that I cannot change. That is how you work with emotions. And then jealousy goes about his or her business. Because now she has spoken, she or he has spoken, you have listened, you have processed, you have learned, and you have made an action. And jealousy goes about their business. You see how that works? You see how that works? It doesn't even have to get into You shouldn't be feeling that. How could you be jealous of that other person? You're insecure, or you have bad self-esteem or low self-esteem, or whatever the hell we're saying these days. Being jealous does not mean that somebody is insecure, meaning that they have low self-esteem. It just might be something in them that they have not accepted or come to terms to terms with. You're looking at a woman with a lighter complexion and you're a dark woman, okay? And you realize that you're jealous of this person because they have a lighter complexion, okay? So your jealousy comes in. It's another example of jealousy. Your jealousy sets in like, she thinks she all that because she light skin. Okay, we all say skinned. She light skinned, but we're not doing that. She light skin. So you can either act like you're not jealous, right? And allow jealousy to be suppressed and fester, or you can acknowledge jealousy and get to the root of it. Why do I feel like that? What have I believed and internalized about dark-skinned people, and I am now projecting that out? What have I internalized that is not true about lighter complected people that I have internalized, and now I need to get it out? That is the purpose of emotions. That is the reason why jealousy is showing up. She's not showing up to make you feel like shit. She's not showing up for you to make you feel worse about yourself. She's showing up for that you can do the work or undo some stuff. Emotions are meant to come temporarily. But when you don't let them pass through by giving them voice and acknowledging them, you give them residence. And now they're out of their nature. They're out of their function because they're not meant to be hoarded. They're not meant to be held on to. They're not meant to be caged up. They're not meant to be suppressed. That is not what emotions are meant for. So now you take them out of their function when you suppress them. So now they're going to create some dysfunction in your body now because they got to go somewhere. They got to go somewhere. It's like all of these animals that they are caging for your entertainment, right? Some of these animals are meant to live in the wild. They're not meant to be caged. We all seen the stories where after a while the lions or the tigers or whatever turn on their so-called masters, right? Because now you've taken me out of my natural element and you're forcing me into something that I wasn't created for. That is what happens to emotions. They are not meant to be caged. They are not meant to be hoarded and held on to. They're not meant to. And so if you do that, they are going to wreak havoc in your body. They're going to wreak havoc on your psyche because you are forcing them to do something that they were never intended to do. Yeah. Okay, so let me see what you guys are saying and then I'm going to move on. All right. I think I saw M Mills. Hey. How are you? Thanks for coming through, sis. I see Ashan, he says I would have said negative emotions too, but the negativity is me, not the emotion. Agreed. Agreed. We got to be careful how we label things simply by how they make us feel. Right? Because you're making me feel this way and therefore you must be negative. Right. Okay, so Joanna, hey Joanna. Joanna says emotions are fleeting feelings. They pass away. They are not facts. Joanna, they are meant to come through and pass through. But because of the way that we are raised, because of how emoting is shunned in our culture and in our families, We don't treat emotions with respect and the way that they should be treated. We do not treat them as these things that are just passing through. They're guests. They're not meant to stay forever, right? And the more we acknowledge that and the more we work with that to where we start treating emotions like that, I can tell you one thing right now. Our emotional intelligence will increase. Our ability to not be so reactionary will increase. The more that we start treating emotions like that, when they come, because they're gonna come, it's gonna be the same emotion again. So if you're like, okay, when I'm angry, I'm just gonna always be upbeat, and it's just gonna always be, I'm just gonna always be blessed and highly favored. You know what I'm saying? And walking with the Lord. All right. If every time you feel anger or a frustration or whatever, that's where you resort to your spiritual bypassing, then you're not going to learn how to develop that muscle, right? Because you're suppressing, so you're not working with the emotion. But if we learn how to deal with emotions like this, at some point we become almost masters of it. It's like, oh, that's anger. Okay, let me see what anger is here to teach. All right, so I need to correct this, I need to correct that. All right, anger, thank you, it was good seeing you. Peace. And you let anger go their way. The more that we do that, the easier it is to navigate, right, our emotional minefields, especially when we're in interaction with each other. Okay. So I agree with Joanna on that one. The one says, regardless of our status, we should celebrate other people's goods and be happy for them. We must remain mindful of our goods and remember to celebrate those are working for us. I agree, the one. Very, very true. All right. Joanna says, holding in negative feelings cause disease, tumors, cancers, and arthritis. Very much true. Um, the body holds all of that information. The subconscious mind, it's there, and that is why all it takes is for a certain type of environment to trigger that. And it's not let I'm just using anger. It's not just the anger for that moment that comes out, it's the anger for the moment before and the anger for the moment before that, because we never handled it correctly in the first place. In fact, we just said, you know what, go to your room. Anger, just go to your room and shut up. And anger is just sitting there in our body waiting for an outlet. And we see it played out all the time in social media. Okay. And yes, and I love that. So the bad things are not so bad after all. A negative emotion rises up to show you that there's something there that has to be dealt with. Love this. I agree. Very true. That's exactly what I'm saying. Ashan said, I have to make sure I adapt this perspective and quit saying negative and positive emotions. Very good. That's very true, Ashan. We label these things. M. Mill says, this is so true. I have had bad GI problems my whole life. I internalize everything. Yep, yep. A lot of us carry our emotions, in our wombs, for the men, the prostate. Like, we're carrying the emotions, and we don't really know what to do with them. And so I'm just going over some things. Another one that I'm going to touch on, because this is a big one in our community, because we have a high obesity rate in the Black collective, in America in general. Okay, but in the Black collective, we have a high obesity rate. So sometimes we use like eating as a way, sorry, to make us feel better during times of stress. So this is another form of suppressing as well. Okay. If you're not properly expressing your feelings, you'll find yourself in a state of stress, which doesn't go away. Okay. And food becomes like almost like a temporary band aid for us. Okay. So another way that we muzzle and suppress our emotions is through food, through sugar, right? Because there's a numbing that's taking place. Okay, so this is what I mean. You talk about emotional constipation. This is the bloating stage of that to me, right? A lot of our people are bloated with unexpressed, muzzled emotions. I'm gonna say that again. A lot of our people are bloated right? With unexpressed emotions, bloated, and we're suppressing through food, our sugar intake, all of that. Okay? Alcohol, addiction, all of those things. Okay? Reality TV. So you have an emotion of, let me see, I don't know, disappointment in yourself, in yourself. So that disappointment comes to teach you, comes to have a conversation with you, like, yo, this is your disappointment, like, yo, what's up? Okay, you disappointed. Yeah, we disappointed about this because you could have had this done by such and such. You procrastinated, and so here we are now. You're disappointed in yourself. Now, this is disappointment talking to you. And you can sit there and you can say, yeah, you're right, blah, 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 blah. And then it's like, okay, what needs to be done? Because disappointment is there to teach you that too. What needs to be done? But if you are uncomfortable with that disappointment, right, and facing it, then you know what a lot of us are doing? We're turning on reality TV because reality TV becomes a distraction for us, right? Or some of us log into YouTube and we enter into spaces where there's a lot of drama going on. Okay? So what we're doing is we're distracting ourselves from our own reality. And so disappointment comes to teach you that something needs to be changed. Instead of focusing on what that disappointment have come to teach you, you suppress it or you push it away by deflecting. Because while you're tapping into, oh, let me watch this instead because look how messed up these people's lives are. So now I don't have to acknowledge how messed up my life is because I could laugh at somebody else's life. And that's what happens when you're uncomfortable with facing emotions. So you decide that you're going to suppress the emotion of disappointment with reality TV. You're going to find people who are doing worse than you, something to laugh at, something to mock, versus facing disappointment, which you're feeling, and making a change so that you don't continue to disappoint yourself. That's another form of suppression. I think I saw Natasha said something. Natasha says, Black people need help disagreeing in an agreeable way. Yes, Natasha. I agree with you. Being able to acknowledge each other's opinions is definitely, our communication skills are whack. I'm just gonna put that, like, communication, conflict resolution, these are areas that we just need to do a better job in. But I think the only way to get to there though is to continually work at it. You're not going to get good at something you don't work at. So here's what I mean when I say that. Like my immediate response to like people acting crazy or whatever is to like go the other way, to just get far away from it. Okay? We can do that, but it's going to keep coming up until we can face it and learn from it. And what do I mean by that? All conversations, especially with Black people, are not going to be comfortable conversations. They're just not. Because a lot of us are really coming with backed up emotions. We're coming with traumas. We're coming with disappointments from the collective, from people that look like us. We're bringing all of that baggage into the conversations. And this is why our conversations are oftentimes so combative. I find that people are constantly looking to prove others wrong. So a lot of us are entering into conversations with the sole purpose of, I'm going to find something wrong in what you're talking about, right? Or I'm just going to find a way to combat what you're saying just because you're another Black person. So I agree with you, Natasha. I see it played out all the time in these spaces, but I want to go ahead and finish up. Yes, the weight gain piece is something that we kind of have to like pay attention to. The increase in cancer, suppressed emotions can cause that as well. Okay, it can actually shorten our lives. You dying early. We dying early because of emotional constipation. Early. Our men are dying early. Women are dying early because it's not safe for them to be their authentic self simply because they're in black bodies. Men are meant to suffer in silence. Men are expected to suffer in silence. They're trained that way from the time they're little boys. And now we're seeing the increase in self-deletion. We're seeing that they're dying earlier than their partners. Emotional constipation. Okay. So yeah, that's just some of the things. Let me make sure I enter. Okay, yeah. Um, sorry, I was just looking at something. So yeah, so I didn't want to stay long with this topic, but I wanted to definitely talk about it because we have to do a better job at allowing space for each other to just express, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Because here's the thing, somebody's emotional journey, somebody processing an emotion, it's not about you. That emotion that they're processing has come to give them something, a message, to bring about a change in their lives. You don't get to tell them that because they're black or they're 50 years old or 60 years old or 18 or 9 or 10 years old, they have no right to those emotions. That's a very dangerous thing that we do with each other. So now we have men who are emotionally constipated, and we have women who are emotionally constipated, and they are coming to the table to have conversations about some of the issues that need to be tackled. And they can't have the conversations because most of the energy goes into what? Projecting on each other, over emoting, because they finally got a moment to say what they want to say, what they've been feeling about men, about black men, and about black women. Now I finally got the opportunity, so I'm just going to let it all out. And you're dealing with emotions from 2012. From 2012. And I'm not saying that you should stay around and be anybody's punching bag. That's not what I'm saying. I'm going to go ahead and say this. There are certain spaces on YouTube that you're not going to see me come up on because I've watched it enough to know that some of the spaces are not safe for black women. And yet, and yet, we continue to still try to force ourselves in those spaces. Why? 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 There's just some places that it's just not safe for you, sis. It's just not. And there are some places that's just not safe for black men, and yet they still show up over there to exert their male power. And all that's doing is adding to the negative emotions that they already feel towards black women. It's not helping. If you have a disdain for black men, you have a problem. If you have a disdain for black women, you have a problem. And when we have a problem, we need to work on our ability to be focused on the solutions. You don't have a problem and then seek to feed that problem by aligning yourself with people and places and things that only increase your disdain for that problem. Then that lets me know you want to have a problem. You want to hold on to that emotion. You want to keep that emotion caged up. But if you're looking for solutions and it's a problem, because here's the thing, if we get physically sick Most of us, if we get physically sick, I'm talking about where the doctor is like, if you don't correct this, you're going to be dead in a year. Most of us will make the changes that are necessary. But here's the truth, this is life and death. What do I mean? This is life and death. Because those emotions that you're caging eventually become sickness in your body. Now you walking around with headaches, migraines. You don't even know why. You don't even know why you don't even know why you have a headache. You're just walking around, yeah, I get migraines. Why do you have migraines? Stomach pain. Why? Why do you have that? Because a lot of us are walking up with pent up emotion. We've normalized emotional constipation. There are people literally who, and I say this all the time, who don't move their bowels every day and they literally feel that that is the way that they're supposed to live. And that is not natural. But because it's been that way for so long, they actually have accepted it as that's just the way that my digestive system works. It's not natural, it's not healthy. It's the same thing with emotional constipation. You are not meant to just harbor emotions that you should have released. Now, I'm going to get into the last part of this is this. We live in a society, black man and black woman, who have policed and experimented and analyzed and dissected our bodies and our behaviors for a very, very long time. Some of what we have inherited from our forefathers, our ancestors, whatever you guys want to call them, was in response to that, was in response to the societal attacks against them, against their black bodies, against their black minds. That was their coping mechanism. Push through. No matter what, keep moving. Keep moving. We don't stop. We keep moving. We get through stuff. We're resilient. We're strong. That's what black means. And at a time, that was true. They had to keep pushing to stay above water. They had to suppress emotions and so forth. So now we fast forward to 2022 and we've inherited the behavior, but we are not under the same circumstances, even though we kind of are, right? So now we're in 2022 and we are still behaving the same way. And I always ask this question when I see people who do healing and so forth, healing circles and everything. I always ask, I always say, is it possible to heal in the same place that is making you sick? I ask that. I do, and I still wrestle with that within myself, guys. I do, because I think the society as a whole is what brings on a lot of our sicknesses, right? I personally believe that. And here's what I come up with, and this is a very temporary solution, very temporary. Okay, we have to find a way until we can, whatever we, if you choose to move out this society to go into another society, whatever that is, until we can get to that point, it's almost like we're going to have to fight on two fronts. We have to start creating spaces, safe spaces, safe spaces, safe spaces. I'm not talking about spaces where you pretend it's safe only to use people personal information against them. So you pretend it's a safe space so that these people can emote and tell you their business and their personal information, and then it's weaponized and exploited. I'm not talking about those pseudo safe spaces. I'm talking about, that how the society has harmed Black people for a long time. Why would we do it to each other? So if the society is not safe for us to heal, then is it possible for us to create pockets within the society? So I would say a pocket would be our home environment, right? Create a healing environment in the home. We don't speak to each other a certain way in this home. Okay? We don't call each other the derogatory names in this home. We uplift each other. We feed each other's spirit in this home. Yes, we know the society we live in. We know how they function. We know they do not like us, and we know they would rather probably see us dead. But that doesn't mean that we have to internalize that and then put that on each other. So we can start with the home. What are our homes looking like? How are we treating our children? How are we treating our spouses, our partners, each other, our neighbors, our communities? How are we treating those people, those that are our inner circle, our families? These are the pocket safe spaces that we can create in the society that's making everybody sick. I just want to make that clear. We can start with our homes. What do they look like? Because we first learn to suppress our emotions in our homes, in our communities, in our families. That's where we learn the culture. So, what does that look like? We can make the changes in our homes, allowing our boys to emote without judgment. And this is for fathers and mothers. Teaching our girls that that thing that you're feeling, it might be jealousy. That thing that you feel, oh, you're angry. Okay, you have every right to be angry because that geezer should have kept his hand to himself. Oh, you mad, young boy? You're right because you're right to that emotion. You have the right to that emotion because that babysitter should have never touched you in that way. And allowing that anger to pass through. And you don't get to time it. Oh, you've been angry for 2 days now. I mean, it's time to let it go because we big on that. People holding on to emotions and people expressing emotions makes us very uncomfortable as Black people. And a part of it is this: because we have never learned how to interact with certain emotions, when we see them show up, right, we just want them to go away. And so this is why we rush people in their healing, we rush people in their grieving, we rush people in going getting over certain things that have happened to them. When are you going to get over it? Because it's making you uncomfortable. So now my process need to be rushed for your sake. We do this to each other all the time. And I'm saying that is one of the ways that we could actually provide safe spaces is for allowing people the right to those emotions. Yes, you have a right to be sad because somebody that meant the world to you, someone who have always supported you, someone who was always there for you, is no longer here. So yes, you can be sad about that. The issue, I don't have an issue with somebody who is very straightforward about being upset or their emotions or whatever. I have a problem. The red flag for me is the people who be like, I'm all right. I'm okay. I'm good. Those are the red flags. So it's really having conversations around what do we do when we feel a certain type of emotion that is uncomfortable for us. And for me is wait for it. Sit it out. Sit with the emotion. Face it. Don't do anything. Just stop for a minute. Don't do anything. If you usually run and get some M&Ms, don't do it. Don't do it. If you usually go and light up a joint or something, don't do it. If you usually go grab a glass of wine or don't do it. Just wait. Sit with it for a moment. Observe it. Listen to it. Be truthful in your conversation with it. Hear what it has come to tell you. Analyze that, process it, and then let the emotion go. It's like they tell you when you're trying to save money and you're trying to stop spending and being impulsive about your spending. They say when you feel that impulse, give it a minute. Maybe let a couple of days pass. And if you don't feel that way anymore, then you didn't need that thing. You were just being impulsive. Okay? You're being impulsive. It's just like that. Wait for a second. The second thing I would say is get away from people who makes it seem like emoting is a sin. Like emoting is so bad. There's this new thing now that's happening in these spaces where telling women that they're emotional is almost like an attack. And it's almost, you know what, it actually is. It's a shame tactic because for a lot of men, emotionalism or feeling any type of emotion is a bad thing, right? So the way that the men are now projecting it onto the woman, to us, are say by saying, okay, and it's a way to be dismissive as well. It's a way to shame and it's a way to be dismissive. Oh, you're so emotional. Or I can't take what you say serious because you're just so emotional. And I'm just like, why is there this undertone of this is a bad thing that women are emotional? Like, I'm just like, what are we doing? What are we saying right now? That you are literally calling a woman emotional as an insult. And the women are doing it back to the men and saying, oh, because this is how the women get their digging. Okay, this is how the women get their digging now because they know the men don't want to be called emotional. So they'll say things like, oh, why you so emotional? And when I hear a woman say that, I'd be like, oh, she's trying to get under his skin. Because we know, especially black men, they don't want to be considered as emotional, right? And so this is the game that we're playing. And what we're doing is that we don't realize that we're sending messages back to each other, back and forth. Black women and black men are sending the message that emotions are bad. We should never entertain them. We should never acknowledge them. In fact, to be a perfect black person, you shouldn't have them. To be real, you ain't really black unless you emotionless. You ain't really black unless you just cold. That's really the message that we're putting out there. Because now we're using you emotional as an attack. We've weaponized it. It's like this war tactic now that we use, like, oh, look at you being all emotional. And I'm like, what are we doing? We're not robots. We're human beings. Things happen. We get emotions that are attached to things. The issue is not the emotions. The issue is what we do with them. And dismissing them is just as bad as suppressing them. Because ultimately, it's the same thing. Because when you dismiss an emotion, emotion don't just go back to where it come from. It sits there and it waits to be acknowledged like a toddler. So let me see what you guys are saying, and then I'm going to get ready to close out. All right. So okay, so the one says also life gives men constant reminders to be hard in order to stay safe. It's not fashionable for average though to be kind. Now, women are buying into that behavior too. Everyone wants to be combative. I agree. I agree with that one. Life, society, the way that society has defined manhood, um, as well as this, manhood is being hard all the time, not showing any softness, any vulnerability, any emotions. That's how manhood is interpreted. That's how manhood is defined in this society in general. Okay. In Western society in general. So New Growth said we can never get a solution until we can destroy the ultimate entity. And you know what? Honestly, New Growth, I am with you on that. But I think that the greatest enemy that we will ever face is within us. It's within us. I say this all the time, and I'm learning this more and more because I'm learning how you think about something, how you perceive something is a life, like when you acknowledge that that is kind of controls how you experience it, your own belief systems around that thing, right? The emotions and your beliefs that's attached to that thing. I think that once we can acknowledge that, yo, I'm the one that's giving energy to this. I think it's a game changer. I think it's a game changer. The greatest enemy to me, this is my opinion, the greatest enemy I think I face every day is myself. And if I can conquer the enemy within me, then the enemy without me do not have a chance. That's how I feel. I think that the most of us are being eaten alive because we haven't even figured out how to master self. I mean, we're talking about emotional constipation, people not even being able to like acknowledge their emotions and face them and deal with them. And they're their emotions. Okay. Um, okay, so Joanna says the cleansing of the body, heart, and mind is so important. I agree, Joanna. I agree. A full-blown detox. Full blown. I'm dealing with it myself in so many different levels. Like there are things that I have held near and dear to me for like a long time that I'm finding, and guys, I am fighting. I am fighting to be able to hold on to them. And the reality is that where I'm trying to go, where I see myself, there are just some things that can't go with me. There are some things that I'm going to have to relinquish, that I'm have to give up. And that's an uncomfortable feeling because there are things that, and paradigms and teachings and beliefs that we are loyal to. We are loyal to, right? That we almost are addicted to them. And so there comes a time though where you may have to release those things, and it's not that easy. It's not that easy. I'm dealing with it right now. I'm literally in the center of that. And so many things within me are being challenged. And one of the things that I say now is that the biggest enemy that I have ever faced is the enemy within myself. Because once someone can get me to behave a certain way, and it becomes a part of who I am, and I've normalized that, that person's work is done. In fact, they can step back and I will self destruct. And that's where the work has to begin for a lot of us. So the cleansing piece, I agree with Joanna 100%. The one, okay. Hey, Willie D! Thanks for passing through and showing some love. Okay. Joanna says we are spiritual beings trying to deal in the physical world. This won't work. The answer is the spiritual one, not religion, spiritual healing. Agreed. And that's what I was saying earlier, Joanna, the spiritual bypassing, why it's so problematic as well. Because sometimes it's just a way to cope. We're using it as a coping mechanism, right? Versus dealing with our problems head on. You know what I'm saying? I also think that some of us, mm, let me see, some of us, like some black people, are using the past in that way as well. Like the past and what happened to our people is not meant for us to stay in it, or um it's not meant to hold us back. That's the best way I can put that. It's meant for us to learn from it and to build on it. But I think a lot of us get trapped, right, in a they hurt us mentality. And until they stop hurting us, we can't do anything. And I don't accept that. I don't buy into that at all. I'm sorry, not sorry. Let me see who else we have. Okay, Ashan. Yes, so true. There is no enemy, only the enemy. So I don't know. Ashan says the way you operate in the world starts in your mind. I agree. I agree as well. So yeah, I really wanted to come on and just kind of discuss just an observation of mine. We are emotionally constipated as a people. And we really have to start with, like I said, start with creating safe spaces in your home. You know, in your everyday life, make small changes. When you have a person that is going through something, like allowing them to like really explore and face their emotions versus be like, this is another thing that we do. This is the spiritual bypassing we do. Girl, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be just fine. We do that. And I had to learn as a woman to stop doing that. Right? Girl, you're gonna be fine. You got it. You got it. And that person may not need that time. That person might just need to be able to be weak and vulnerable in that moment. But because we always have to bring in this strong persona as black people, it ends up doing more harm than good. And so you think you're helping your sister by, like, you're almost saying that because you're black, you got it, because we're resilient, right? And a lot of our people are suffering in silence and inside, and they don't know who to talk to. Because when you're surrounded by superheroes and you discover that you're just a mere human, who you about to go to? When you're surrounded by all superheroes, because that's the persona black people tend to put. We strong, we got this, because we've always had to be that way. But what has that done to our mental health? What has it done to our spiritual health? What has it done to our physical health? What is the damage being done? And if something is damaging us, then we have to change it. That's why I do not push the independent, strong black woman trope. Black people cannot afford to be independent. Black people need to be interdependent because we need each other. The individualistic mindset that the Western society pushes on all of us, we have to begin to detox from that, to see your brother and your sister as a human being, to see your neighbor as such, to see your children as such. Human beings deserving of love just like you are, and grace just like you, and affection just like you, and space to be their true and genuine self just like you deserve. We have to start treating each other that way. We have to start treating ourselves that way. You are deserving of love. You are deserving of affection. You are deserving of gentleness. You are deserving of that, black man, black woman. That's where it starts, is knowing that you're deserving of those things. Knowing that it's your birthright. Because once you can get that down pack in yourself, it's going to change how you treat other people. The issue with us is that we need to rehumanize ourselves, because a lot of us don't treat ourselves like human beings. We are hard on ourselves for small mistakes. We are disappointed in ourselves for making mistakes that is a very human thing to do. We're angry with ourselves. We're beating up on ourselves. We're talking down on ourselves because we don't see ourselves as human. We see ourselves as black. So I'm black, so I can't be sad. I'm black, so I can't show dependency on anybody else. I'm black, so I have to treat my children in such a rough way. Because that's black parenting for a lot of us. All of these things that we have attached to us, to our thinking, because we are in black bodies. All of these things that we've internalized, that's been projected on us, and now they've become a part of our identity, to the point where we start looking at people and questioning their blackness if they're showing up outside of that. But the thing is, we do it to ourselves first, and that's why we do it to each other. How are you showing up for yourself? When's the last time? Yeah, put it in the chat. When's the last time you cried? Put it in the chat. When is the last time you cried? Nobody wants to tell me, huh? When's the last time you cried? What do you need to cry about right now that you've been holding in? Because that's a cleanse too. That's a cleanse too, by the way. Tears is a form of detox as well. When is the last time you cried? When is the last time you wanted to cry and you chose not to because you just didn't have the time for it? Or you felt guilty or uncomfortable? That's another way that we release as well. That's another way for us to not be emotionally constipated. We need to cry more. Black men and black women need to cry more. We need to make space for each other's tears, for each other's hurt, for each other's pain. We need to make space for that in our own lives and reserve our judgments on ourselves, on each other. Black women, our laps have always been a safe space for Black men over the years. They should still be safe spaces for our children, for our men, for our women, for our sisters, for our brothers, for our uncles, for our cousins, whatever. Your life should be a safe space, period. So we have to work on that as individuals. Am I being a safe space for the people around me to be able to emote in a healthy way? Am I reserving my judgment or am I projecting judgment onto them? Am I avoiding? Who are you guys avoiding right now? Am I avoiding them because they're going through a tough time and I just don't want to deal with that energy? You avoiding somebody right now because they're going through a tough time and you're not willing to deal with that emotion. We got to change that. And I'm not saying to become a trash can for everyone where they're just calling you just to vent and just and then you leave out every time feeling worse. I'm talking about giving space in the sense of like, listen, it's okay to cry. It's okay to stop and take a break. It's okay to express anger. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about just sitting down and just somebody calls you just to dump on you. Because we got to protect our energy too now and our space as well. But how often are we avoiding each other because someone is going through something? We do it a lot. I just don't have time for it. I just don't want to deal with it. I just can't. And that's okay. That's okay as well, because you might not be able to deal with it at that time. That's not what I'm speaking to. I'm speaking to the fact that we are uncomfortable with seeing black people express and emote and have emotions in real time. Like, we struggle with that. So yeah, I see some of you guys answer me. Sean said he cried yesterday, and Joanna, a year ago. She said maybe a year ago. Wow. Huh? A whole year no tear, sis? Yeah. Ah. D says we tend to view crying as a weakness. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's why men, kind of stay away from that too, because it's just perceived as a weakness. But for me, it's a release. It's like turning the valve a little bit to relieve some of the pressure. So I'm not sure, where we get that from. Um, I don't think it's a weakness. I think it's a very human thing to do. And I think that we need to do it as much as we need to do it. A lot of us are holding back and holding in things, and it's leading to sickness in our lives. It just is. Obesity, that's a sickness that falls in that category too. Because we're eating ourselves to death because what we're trying to do is numb. That's it. That's it. Inya says, she says she cry often. Your artist says, she says, I'm a crier. Okay. Did you want to say Jesus wept? I think that's the shortest scripture in the Bible or something. Period. I wrote about this regarding men and women crying. Yeah. And she says it's so healthy to do so. It is. It is. So, and I just want to say emoting is not, I'm speaking about crying right now, but emoting is not just crying. Like I gave the example earlier about jealousy, how we manage anger, how we express anger, disappointment. Those are just some emotions. You know what I'm saying? And then also acknowledging that, and I say this all the time, as women, we have been given the privilege of exploring almost the full spectrum. I think it decreases once you get down to like black women and so forth. But we have been given the liberty of exploring a broader spectrum of emotions than little boys. Than little boys. That's why we're dealing with the men and how they're expressing themselves now today. Like, we really don't know how to take that, because we know men to have like two defaults, you know what I'm saying, as far as emotional expression. And now you're seeing all of this other stuff happening, and women are like, hold up, what? Y'all don't do that. What y'all doing? Right, we're seeing that happening now, and that's because of socialization. Like, little girls are just given more of a liberty to express and emote, versus boys, and then you narrow it down even to like family culture. you know um some families just have a hardness to them, and it's like, that's not what we do. We just keep it moving and we keep it trekking, and that's what we do here. But the reality is that you're going to keep it moving, and you're going to just keep building and building and building more baggage. And you're either going to implode or explode. And I think what we're watching right now is a lot of explosion right now, because people have found a way to move their emotional bowels, I guess, to become not constipated. They found an outlet, they found a way to release. And what happens is, now I want to relieve myself. So if it means that I'm going to have to make you feel like shit and dump all of my emotions on you, if I'm on a panel with you, whatever that is, I am going to release it, because I need to feel better, because I have been so emotionally constipated for such a long time. When you have little boys who cannot express themselves simply because they're little boys, they grow up to be men who are angry and have forgotten who they're angry at in the first place. Because again, we go back to, once you start suppressing emotions, you start separating emotions from the memory that it was attached to. So a lot of people are angry today, and they don't even know why they're angry. They're 24, 25 years old, angry. And what it is that it's that 5-year-old little boy or girl that's sitting inside of them that's still angry because they've never been able to resolve an issue. So they're sitting there angry. And that person who is 25, 26 is like, I don't know why I'm so angry. I don't know why, I'm always on edge. They don't forget the wound that brought on the anger and they don't forgot it because it was so long ago. So now the memory of it is in their bodies and they're like, I don't even know why I'm mad. I don't even know why I'm so triggered by black women. I don't even know why I'm so triggered by black men. I don't know why when a black man raises his voice, why it triggers this in me. And these are the things that we need to start having conversations with ourselves about. Social media is not therapy. It's not. Your YouTube audience are not your therapists. Those of us on these platforms, we are not your therapists. So now you don't forgot why you mad. And now the rest of us got to deal with it. Because I can guarantee you 90 something percent of the time when somebody explodes on you, it's not just about that moment. It's not. Whether it's a man or a woman, it usually isn't. So before I leave, I'm just going to make sure I go over some of the things that we can do to address our emotional constipation, right? We could start by doing like just mini simple exercises. I started off talking about this where you feel an emotion, you're upset, you're sad. Instead of being anxious to get rid of the emotion, giving the emotion time to communicate or to sit with the emotion to communicate what it initially came to teach. Allowing time for that. Okay? Sit with it, even if it makes you uncomfortable. That's one way. That's one way. Another way is showing ourselves grace. Being jealous of somebody does not have to define your entire being. Being jealous because maybe somebody is maybe somewhere in life that you would like to be, right? It doesn't mean that you're a bad person because you're experiencing that jealousy, right? Maybe the jealousy has come to show you that, hey, that person is not more special than you. So why don't you look at what you do have going on or the things that you might need to do to get to where they're at? It doesn't have to be dismissed. It don't have to be hidden. It don't have to become this secret thing because you don't want anybody to know that you're actually jealous of this other person. Because I have news for you. It finds a way to seep through one way or the other. And we know. We see you, boo. We know you're jealous. You're the only one trying to hide it, but we can see it clear as day. So instead of trying to get rid of it, facing the jealousy and making corrections so that when you see someone doing something good that you maybe desire to do in your life, and if you feel that jealousy coming up, now you know how to deal with it head on. Okay, what do I need to, you get what I'm saying? Or to not even have to experience it as much anymore. Because you realize that what's triggering it is your refusal to go after what you want. So they're going after it, and you feel like, yo, like that's what I always wanted to do. Then go do it. After that jealousy have shown you what you need to do, go and do it. It don't have to be a bad thing. Okay? It don't have to be a bad thing. Another one is allowing our children. This is for the parents out there. Because if we talk about breaking familial patterns, or some people call them generational curses, whatever you guys go by, whatever you guys want to call it. The only way to break those things is to be different from what you are expected to be. That's it. So, if you know a part of what have caused your emotional constipation is the way that you were parented, then you have to parent your children different so that they don't also be emotionally constipated. So being aware of those things. Okay, maybe you're a man and it didn't feel good that you were slapped every time you would cry, or you were told, I'll give you something to cry about, or you were threatened. And you remember how that made you feel. So now you have children, you have boys, you have girls. You need to make sure that you are not repeating those same patterns with them. You have to parent differently because you remember how that made you feel, right? And how now it has affected you as an adult. So the key is when you see yourself doing that with your children, you need to correct it, right? And in correcting it, you actually are you're working on two things. You're working on your parenting, right? And you're working on your own inner issues, right? Whatever residue came with that form of parenting that you got. So allowing our children the space to emote, teaching them that, yes, anger is fine. What you do with it is going to determine whether it was bad or whether you are bad or good. Anger is just an emotion. What are you going to do with it? And it's a secondary emotion. It's usually rooted in something else. So sometimes it might be expressed as anger, but like I said earlier, the person is sad, or the person is disappointed, or the person is lonely, but it's showing up as anger, right? So being able to teach that child that, how to manage, how to hone their emotions, their anger, how to manage that, how to direct it, how to be the boss of your emotions versus allowing your emotions to boss you around. That's what we teach children. We don't just tell them, don't emote, don't get upset, don't show any. No, that's not the right way. Talking to them, allowing them the space to express, and then walking them through how to properly manage that. But in order for us to do that as parents, we have to do it on ourselves first. Otherwise, what are you teaching? So, those are some of the ways we can begin to address our emotional constipation. Okay? We don't have to stay backed up. We don't have to stay in pain. We don't have to suffer in silence. Okay? Our jealousy no longer has to be a secret. Okay? Our anger no longer has to become violent because now we are giving ourselves some tools. We're finding different tools now to do the work because the tools that were given to us was for another time. And we don't have to stay committed to it if it doesn't work. If you know if you know cursing your children out doesn't work, then you have to stop cursing them out. If you know yelling at them or being derogatory and demeaning to them doesn't work, you have to change it. It didn't work on you. In fact, it did damage. So why would you want to do that same damage to your children? It's not rude for children to emote. It's not rude for children to emote. What ends up coming off as rudeness is the adults around them projecting that onto them, or them not being taught how to properly process the emotions. So it comes off as disrespect. And oftentimes what we call disrespect is usually just an inconvenience for us. We want children to be slaves. We want to be masters to them. We want them to do what we tell them. We don't want them to think for themselves. We don't want them to have their own opinions, their own feelings about stuff. We just want them to be mini us. And what it is that the minute that they show us that they are not mini us, that they're actually individual beings, we have a difficult time with that as adults, because that is the type of parenting that we inherited. And so we have a tough time with that. But I am here to tell you, because I'm doing it in my own life, that it doesn't have, you don't have to stay committed to something that does damage. You don't have to stay committed to something that doesn't work or no longer serves the good. We can let it go. We can let it go. Stifling your children's emotion, we can let that go. Stifling your own emotions, we can let that go. Why? Because it's damaging us. So do something different. We're creative people. This is what we do. We're known to be improvisers. This is what we do. So why not, when it comes to a lot of this generational stuff? Why not be creative? Why not stop and say, yo, this ain't working, y'all. Let's come up with something brand new that works for the time that we're in. Why not? Why not pick the things that worked? Go with them and discard the ones that don't work. I think that some of us are doing that now. And I'm proud. If you're here, I'm about to leave, but if you're here and you are doing that work right now, and you are just learning how to give vocabulary to your emotions, and you are learning how to express your emotions without disrespect, if you have chosen to parent a different way so that your children would not be emotionally constipated, I applaud you. I am proud of you. And I say to you, keep up the good work, keep pushing. I know it's going to be lonely at times, but that's okay. Eventually your tribe will find you, right? The people who need to support you, the community that you need around you to encourage you on your new walk, they're going to find you. You're going to attract that to yourself, so don't get discouraged. Okay? So for those who are just kind of like out there and it's like, I need something different because this isn't working, for to those who can't emote or can't express themselves, but they're feeling like hopeless, they're feeling like, I don't want to be here anymore because nobody cares. Okay, those people who feel like, I can't express how I feel about this because when I do, the entire family gaslights me. You might have to find a new family. I am so sorry I have to be the one to tell you. You might have to find yourself a new family. And what do I mean like by that? Family is not just all about blood. That's a part of it. But there are people who are family because they have the same mission, the same goal, the same worldview, right? And they create families from their connections. Find people who are supportive of you in your healing journey, in your process to figuring out what your next steps are. If your family that you're connected to are having a hard time understanding, and if your anger is connected to a lot of family secrets and so forth, you may have to find another family. Okay? To the men who are holding on to stuff because it's just not safe for you to, show other emotions. And so you are thinking about, like, the worst of the worst, or hurting someone or hurting yourself, you know, find someone that you trust. All of us have at least one or two people in our circles that are good listeners. I'm gonna say one or two. It's like small. Find that person. Try being honest with them and just tell them, just tell them you just need an ear. Because our friends who listen well, they'll listen, they'll let you go. They'll let you talk. And sometimes some of us, we answer our own questions. We become solutions to our own problems if we are given the space to just kind of like express them and say how we feel. Find someone around you who, listens, who is not going to interrupt you, who is going to allow you to emote without judgment. Find that person. Be honest and have the conversation, because we all need each other. We all need somebody. You cannot do this journey on your own. And if you are trying to walk on your emotional constipation, you can't do that on your own either. So it might just be one person out of your circle, and that's okay. That's okay. So I hope that I said something that someone was able to take away today. I did not want to be here this long, but I was, as usual. But yes, I hope that you guys got something out of it. Usually, when I come, I try to discuss things that I feel like are real issues that we're having that we're just not talking about. Maybe we're talking around them. And I try to at least offer solutions if I can, where I can. And I like to engage you guys in the comment section. So I hope that someone got something out of this, and that it can help them along in their journey. Yeah, I think that's all that I have to say today. If you guys have anything else, just let me know in the comments. I am going to be closing out. Um, Inya, thank you. Thank you. I'm a little bit low energy today, but thank you. I think I got everything out that I wanted to get out. Let me see. I think that's everyone. So I just want to let you guys know. Oh, some Rico Ray was saying, great point. Social media only worsens things for us. I agree, Ray. I agree, because people be feeling shitty and then they log on and they just make themselves even more shitty, because people are simply capturing moments on social media, and they can make their entire life seem like something to be, something to aspire to, but they're miserable. And all they did was capture a moment of them smiling, and we're like, oh my, I just wish I had their life. And so we just leave out of social media. We log off feeling even more shitty, right? I ain't got what they got. All the while, people are on there performing, like standing up next to cars that's not theirs, you know what I'm saying? Filming from houses that's not theirs. I mean, it is ridiculous. It really is. So, Ray, I agree with you that, social media does not help us at all. And the way that we deal with each other on social media um, doesn't help at all. I try my best. And this is partially why certain conversations I just don't inject myself into, because I understand the plight of black men and black women, just as a collective in the society, and I understand that we're literally out here trying to heal in the same place that made us sick in the first place, and that's difficult. So when I enter into any of these conversations, I try to enter into them with grace and understanding, because the reality is that none of us um none of us have been untouched. None of us. All of us have something that we're dealing with, every single one of us. And that is how I like to approach you guys. That's how I like to approach people in my real life in general. I just assume that people have something that they're currently working through, and it helps me to show grace. And so there's something y'all could try too. Every person that you meet in this space, people that you meet outside of this space in your regular life, just assume that they are currently dealing with something that is going to help in showing grace towards them. I promise you it will. You don't have to know their business. Just make the assumption. Make the assumption that that person might be on the edge. Make the assumption that that person might be on the last, right? Make the assumption. And when you approach them, if you make that assumption, I can guarantee you, you're going to be careful in how you deal with them, because you don't want to be the person to push them over. That helps. That helps tremendously. Just approach each other like, yo, everybody got some shit they're dealing with, because that's a fact. So yeah. I see a R just came through. Trias. Okay. Um, Hey, AR. I am closing out, guys. I gotta go. But I love you guys. Thanks for sticking it out with me and tuning in. Let me know in the comment section if you got anything out of the conversation. Maybe it made you think. Maybe something that you're gonna try to apply to your life. Let me know in the comment section under this video at some point. And I just want to tell you guys peace and blessings. And thank you for rocking with me. And if there's something that you guys want me to talk about, also put that in the comment section. If I am not comfortable talking about it, I will probably just be like, nah. But if it's something that you feel like we need to probably discuss and we're not having the conversation, put it in the comment section. And if it requires me bringing someone on or just having the conversation about it, I will do so. But until next time, which will be Friday at 5 p.m., I am going to tell you guys peace and blessings and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye.